Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands as he finished checking the air filters in Section 12. The mining station Kepler-7 was old and always breaking down. As the only human engineer on the station, Marcus spent most of his days crawling through tight spaces that the alien workers could not fit into. The Zephyrians owned everything out here. They were tall beings made of what looked like living crystal. Their skin sparkled blue and green in the light. They could speak to each other without words, using their minds. To them, humans were just tools with hands. Marcus had heard the news 3 days ago. Empress Zilandra herself was coming to inspect their mining operation. She ruled over hundreds of worlds and had never visited such a small place before. Everyone on the station was nervous. The other workers, mostly Zephyrians and a few other alien species, whispered about what this meant. Marcus just kept doing his job. He had learned long ago that staying quiet was the best way to survive out here. The morning of the visit, Marcus was checking the main support beams in Tunnel 7 when his scanner started beeping. The readings were not good. The metal was showing stress fractures. Too much mining had weakened the structure. If they kept digging, the whole section could collapse. Marcus climbed out of the tunnel and found Supervisor Veltar, a tall Zephyrian with bright blue crystal skin. Veltar was talking to other supervisors using his mind speech. Marcus waited until they finished. "Sir, I need to report a problem," Marcus said. Veltar looked down at him. The Zephyrian was 3 feet taller than Marcus. His crystal face showed no emotion. "What is it, their crawler?" Marcus hated that name, but he kept his voice calm. "The support beams in Tunnel 7 are cracking. The metal is weak. We should stop mining there until we can fix it." Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your primitive tools cannot understand what our minds can see clearly. The tunnels are safe. We have checked them with our telepathic sensors. But the metal stress readings show enough." Veltar waved his hand. "Go back to your simple work. Leave the real engineering to those who understand it." Marcus wanted to argue, but he knew it would not help. He had tried before to explain things to the Zephyrian engineers. They always thought their mental abilities were better than human tools. 2 hours later, the Empress arrived. Marcus watched from a window as her ship landed. It was beautiful, made of the same crystal material as Zephyrian skin. The ship sparkled like a jewel as it touched down on the landing pad. Empress Zilandra stepped out of the ship. She was the most impressive Zephyrian Marcus had ever seen. Her crystal skin was pure white with veins of gold running through it. She wore a crown that seemed to be made of light itself. Behind her walked a smaller figure. The young Prince Kethver looked to be about 10 years old in human terms. His crystal skin was still clear and soft, not yet hardened like adult Zephyrians. Marcus had heard that young Zephyrians were fragile until their skin became fully crystallized. The royal party moved through the station like they owned it, which they did. Marcus went back to work, but he could hear the tour group moving closer to his area. The Empress was asking questions about production numbers and profit margins. "And this tunnel produces how much ore per day?" the Empress asked as they approached Tunnel 7. 50 tons, Your Majesty," Veltar answered proudly. "We have increased output by 30% this quarter." Marcus looked up from his work. They were right outside the entrance to the dangerous tunnel. He could see young Prince Kethver looking around with curiosity. The prince wandered closer to the tunnel entrance while the adults talked. "The structural integrity is perfect," Veltar continued. "Our telepathic scans show no problems at all." Marcus stood up. He knew he should not speak, but the prince was getting too close to the unstable area. "Excuse me, Your Majesty." Everyone turned to stare at him. The Empress looked surprised that a human had spoken to her directly. Veltar looked angry. "The tunnel has some structural problems," Marcus said quickly. "It might not be safe for the tour." Veltar stepped forward. "This monkey does not know what he is talking about, Your Majesty. His primitive tools cannot measure what our minds can clearly see." The Empress studied Marcus with interest. Her golden eyes seemed to look right through him. "And what do your tools tell you, human?" Marcus felt everyone staring at him. His heart was beating fast, but he answered honestly. "The support beams are cracking. Too much stress on the metal. The tunnel could collapse if we are not careful." "Impossible," Veltar said. "We would sense any danger with our telepathic abilities." The Empress nodded slowly. "Indeed. Our minds can detect structural problems that your mechanical devices cannot even imagine." She looked at Marcus with something that might have been pity. "Return to your work, little creature." Marcus wanted to say more, but he knew it was hopeless. He watched as the royal party entered Tunnel 7. Prince Kethver skipped along beside his mother, excited to see the mining operation. Marcus picked up his tools and started to follow at a distance. Something in his gut told him this was wrong. He had been doing this work for 15 years. He knew metal stress when he saw it. But who was he to argue with telepathic minds that could supposedly see everything? As the group moved deeper into the tunnel, Marcus noticed his scanner was beeping more urgently. The stress readings were getting worse. He looked up at the ceiling and saw a small piece of metal. Dust falling from one of the support joints. His human instincts screamed danger, but he was just a dirt crawler. What did he know compared to the mighty Zephyrian minds? Marcus was about to find out how much his primitive tools really knew. The ground started shaking just as Prince Kethver asked his mother about the mining machines. At first, it was just a small tremor. Everyone stopped talking and looked around. "What was that?" the Empress asked. Veltar closed his crystal eyes and reached out with his mind. "Just a small seismic shift, Your Majesty. Nothing dangerous. The mountains settle sometimes." Marcus felt his scanner going crazy. The readings were jumping all over the place. Metal stress was reaching critical levels. He opened his mouth to warn them, but before he could speak, the world exploded. The tunnel ceiling came down like an avalanche. Huge chunks of rock and twisted metal beams crashed to the ground. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, casting everything in red light. Marcus was thrown against the wall by the force of the collapse. His ears rang from the noise. Dust filled the air so thick he could barely breathe. When the rumbling finally stopped, he found himself trapped behind a wall of debris. "Hello?" he called out. "Is anyone hurt?" He heard voices from the other side of the rubble. The Empress was calling for her son. Veltar was shouting orders to the rescue teams on his communicator. Marcus climbed over the rocks and found a small gap he could squeeze through. On the other side, he saw the royal party gathered in a pocket of space that had been protected by a fallen support beam. The Empress was unhurt, but she looked terrified. Veltar and 3 other Zephyrian engineers were checking their equipment. 2 security guards were trying to move rocks with their energy weapons, but they were making little progress. "Where is Kethver?" the Empress demanded. Everyone looked around. The young prince was not with them. "He was right here," one of the guards said. "Just before the collapse." Marcus squeezed through the gap completely. "I saw him move toward the side tunnel," he said. "The one that leads to the air processing station." The Empress turned to him with wild eyes. "Then go get him." Veltar stepped forward. "Your Majesty, our rescue teams are already on their way. They have the proper equipment to handle this situation. This human cannot help." "But I know these tunnels better than anyone," Marcus said. "I built half of the maintenance shafts myself." "With your primitive tools," Veltar said with disgust. "Stand aside and let the real engineers work." Marcus bit his tongue. He wanted to point out that his primitive tools had warned him this would happen. But arguing would not help the trapped prince. For the next hour, Marcus watched the Zephyrian rescue teams try to break through the debris. They used energy beams to try to cut through the rocks. They used their telepathic powers to try to sense the prince's location. They used gravity manipulators to try to move the heavier stones. Nothing worked. The rocks were too hard for the energy beams. The mineral deposits in the stone blocked their telepathic scanning. The debris was too unstable to move safely. Marcus studied the collapsed area while they worked. He knew this section of the mine better than anyone. The side tunnel where the prince had gone led to an old air processing station. That station connected to a network of maintenance shafts that ran throughout the mine. The problem was that the air processing station used an older atmosphere system. If the collapse had damaged the pipes, toxic gases could be leaking into that area. Young Zephyrians were much more sensitive to environmental dangers than adults. Prince Kethver could be poisoned even if he was not hurt by the falling rocks. Marcus also noticed something else. The Zephyrian engineers had missed. Their equipment was designed for clean, precise work. But this collapse was messy and chaotic. The debris was mixed with old mining equipment, broken pipes, and twisted metal. Their advanced tools were not made for this kind of rough environment. His human tools, on the other hand, were built for exactly this kind of problem. "Excuse me, Your Majesty," Marcus said quietly. The Empress was pacing back and forth, watching the rescue team's work. She spun around when he spoke. "What is it, human?" "I think I know another way to reach the prince." Valtar looked up from his equipment. "Impossible. We have scanned every possible route. The collapse has sealed all access points." Marcus shook his head. "Not all of them. There is a maintenance shaft that runs parallel to the air processing station. It is too small for your people to use, but I could fit. Those shafts are not marked on our blueprints," Valtar said, "because I built them after the original construction. They are not in the official records." Marcus looked directly at the Empress. "Your Majesty, that side tunnel has an old atmosphere system. If the collapse damaged the gas lines, the prince could be in serious danger. Every minute we wait makes it worse." The Empress stared at him for a long moment. Marcus could see the war going on behind her golden eyes. Everything in her culture told her that humans were inferior. But her son was in danger, and the superior Zephyrian methods were not working. "It is too dangerous," Valtar protested. "The maintenance shafts were not designed for this kind of situation. They could collapse at any moment." Marcus pulled his equipment belt tighter around his waist. "Your Majesty, I have been crawling through dangerous spaces my whole life. It is what humans do. It is what you keep us around for." The Empress closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she looked older. "If you die trying to save my son, human, I will ensure your name is remembered with honor." "I do not plan to die," Marcus said simply. "But if I do, just make sure people know I tried." Valtar made one last protest. "Your Majesty, this is madness. A primitive creature with basic tools cannot accomplish what our advanced technology cannot." The Empress held up her hand for silence. She looked at Marcus with new eyes. "Show me this maintenance shaft, human, and may the stars preserve us all." Marcus nodded and picked up his toolkit. Somewhere beyond the rubble, a young prince was waiting for rescue. It was time to see what human determination could accomplish. Marcus crawled through the maintenance shaft with only a small headlamp to light his way. The metal walls groaned and creaked around him. Every few feet, he had to stop and check his scanner to make sure the path ahead was stable. Behind him, he could hear the Zephyrian rescue team still trying to break through the main collapse. Their energy weapons buzzed and crackled as they cut at the rocks. But Marcus knew they were fighting the wrong battle. Sometimes the direct approach was not the best approach. The maintenance shaft was barely wide enough for his shoulders. A Zephyrian could never fit in here, even a young one like Prince Kethva. Their crystal bodies were too rigid. But Marcus had spent years squeezing into tight spaces to fix broken equipment. After 20 minutes of crawling, Marcus reached the first obstacle. A section of the shaft had been crushed by the collapse. Metal plates had bent inward, creating a gap only a few inches wide. Marcus studied the problem with his flashlight. The Zephyrian engineers would have declared this passage impossible. Their tools could probably cut through the metal, but the noise and vibrations might cause another collapse. Marcus had a different idea. He pulled out a small hydraulic jack from his toolkit. It was an old human tool, nothing fancy, just metal and mechanical pressure. He positioned it carefully between the bent plates and began pumping the handle. Slowly, quietly, the metal began to bend back. Marcus worked patiently, checking the stress readings on his scanner after each pump. When the gap was wide enough, he squeezed through and continued forward. The next problem was worse. The shaft ahead was filled with a yellowish gas that his scanner identified as methane mixed with industrial solvents. Just like he had feared, the collapse had broken the old gas lines. The toxic fumes would kill a young Zephyrian in minutes. Marcus pulled his emergency breathing mask from his belt and sealed it over his face. The mask only had 30 minutes of air, but it would have to be enough. He crawled forward into the poisonous cloud. The gas burned his eyes even through the mask. His scanner was beeping warnings about toxic levels. But Marcus pushed forward. Somewhere ahead was a frightened child who needed help on as he crawled. Marcus thought about his own daughter back on Earth. She was about the same age as Prince Kethva. If she were trapped and scared, Marcus would want someone to risk everything to save her. It did not matter that this child was an alien prince instead of a human girl. Fear and pain were the same for everyone. The shaft began to slope downward. Marcus could feel water dripping from above. His scanner showed that the structural damage was getting worse. The whole section could come down at any moment. Then he heard it. A faint crying sound coming from somewhere ahead. "Hello?" Marcus called softly. "Is someone there?" The crying stopped for a moment. Then a young voice answered. "Help me. Please help me." Marcus crawled faster. The voice was coming from a junction where the maintenance shaft connected to the air processing station. When he reached the opening, he could see into the largest space below. Prince Kethva was huddled in a corner about 10 feet down. His crystal skin, which should have been clear and bright, was turning a sickly gray color. The toxic gas was poisoning him. The opening in the floor was too wide to jump across. Marcus looked around for a way down. The ladder that should have been there had been torn away by the collapse. Marcus pulled a length of metal cable from his toolkit. It was strong enough to hold his weight, but there was nowhere solid to attach it. The walls of the air processing station were cracked and unstable. Then Marcus had an idea that would have horrified any safety engineer. He wedged himself across the narrow shaft opening, bracing his back against one side and his feet against the other. Then he lowered the cable down to the prince. "Grab the cable," Marcus called down. "I will pull you up." Prince Kethva looked up with frightened eyes. "I cannot climb. I am too weak." Marcus could see that the prince was right. The toxic gas had affected his strength. The young Zephyrian could barely stand, let alone climb a cable. Marcus made a decision that could have killed them both. He tied one end of the cable around his waist and rappelled down into the poisonous chamber. As soon as he entered the larger space, he could feel the gas attacking his exposed skin. His breathing mask was the only thing keeping him alive. Prince Kethva collapsed as soon as Marcus reached him. The prince was still breathing, but his crystal skin was turning darker gray. Marcus had seen this kind of poisoning before. They had minutes, not hours. Marcus picked up the prince and slung him over his shoulder. The young Zephyrian was heavier than he looked, but Marcus had carried mining equipment that weighed more. The real problem was climbing back up the cable while carrying the prince. Marcus clipped the prince's clothing to his own safety harness and began to climb. Hand over hand, foot by foot, he pulled them both up toward the maintenance shaft. His arms burned with the effort. The toxic gas made his head spin. Halfway up, the cable started to slip. Marcus had not been able to secure it properly in his rush to reach the prince. He felt them both starting to fall back down into the poisonous chamber. Marcus did something that only a human would think of. He jammed his feet against the wall and used his body as a brake. The cable cut into his waist, but it stopped their fall. Pain shot through his back and ribs, but he kept climbing. When they finally reached the maintenance shaft, Marcus was gasping for breath. The prince was unconscious, but still breathing. Marcus's air supply was almost gone. The trip back through the shaft was a nightmare. Marcus had to push the unconscious prince ahead of him while crawling backward. The gas had made him dizzy and weak. His hands were shaking from exhaustion, but he kept going. Every few feet, he checked the prince's pulse. Still alive. Still breathing. That was all that mattered. When Marcus finally emerged from the maintenance shaft, the Zephyrian rescue teams were amazed. They had been trying to break through the debris for hours with no success. A human with simple tools had accomplished what their advanced technology could not. Marcus collapsed on the ground, still holding Prince Kethvar. "Get him to medical," he gasped. "Gas poisoning. He needs treatment now." As the medical team took the prince away, Marcus allowed himself to smile. Sometimes being primitive was exactly what the situation called for. Marcus woke up 3 days later in the medical bay. His whole body felt like it had been hit by a mining truck. Bandages covered his arms and chest where the toxic gas had burned his skin. His ribs ached from the strain of carrying Prince Kethvar up the cable. The first thing he saw was Empress Zelandra sitting in a chair beside his bed. Her white crystal skin seemed to glow in the dim light of the medical bay. She was staring at him with those golden eyes, but her expression was different from before. There was no arrogance or disgust. Instead, she looked curious, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "You are awake," she said softly. Marcus tried to sit up, but pain shot through his chest. "How is the prince?" "Alive, thanks to you." The Empress leaned forward. "The doctors say he will make a full recovery. The gas poisoning could have killed him if you had arrived even 10 minutes later." Marcus nodded and lay back down. "I am glad he is safe." "Why?" the Empress asked suddenly. "Why what? Why did you risk your life for my son? You knew it was dangerous. You knew you might die. Why would a human care about a Zephyrian child?" Marcus thought about the question for a moment. It seemed obvious to him, but maybe it was not obvious to her. He was scared and in danger. Someone had to help him. "But he is not your species. Not your family. My people have treated your people badly for generations. We call you dirt crawlers and treat you like tools. Why would you care what happens to us?" Marcus turned his head to look at her. "Your Majesty, when I saw the prince trapped and afraid, I did not see a Zephyrian royal. I saw a child who needed help. I have a daughter about his age back on Earth. If she were trapped somewhere, I would hope that someone, anyone, would try to save her. It does not matter what species they are." The Empress was quiet for a long time. "This concept is difficult for me to understand. In Zephyrian culture, we help our own kind first. Family, then clan, then species. The idea of risking yourself for a stranger, especially one of a different race, is foreign. Maybe that is why humans seem primitive to you," Marcus said. "We do not always think logically. Sometimes we just do what feels right." A small figure appeared in the doorway. Prince Kethvar walked slowly into the room. His crystal skin was still pale, but it was clear again instead of the sickly gray color. He looked much healthier. Mother, is the guardian awake? The prince asked. Guardian? Marcus repeated. The prince walked over to his bed and stared at Marcus with wide eyes. You saved me from the dark place with the bad air. You carried me out when I could not walk. You are my guardian. The Empress watched this exchange with interest. Kepler has been asking about you every hour since he woke up. He insists that you are his protector now. Marcus smiled at the young prince. I am glad you are feeling better, Your Highness. Tell me about humans, the prince said suddenly. Are they all like you? What do you mean? Brave and kind and willing to help people who are different from them? Marcus looked at the Empress, then back at the prince. Some are. Humans are not all the same, just like Zephyrians are not all the same. But most parents will do anything to protect children, even if those children are not their own. Even alien children? Even alien children. The prince climbed up on the chair next to his mother. Mother, why did the supervisor say humans are primitive? This human used better tools than our engineers. The Empress shifted uncomfortably. Veltar believes that because we can read minds and use energy technology, we are more advanced than species that use mechanical tools. But the mechanical tools work better, the prince pointed out. They warned about the danger when our mind reading did not see it. They fit in small spaces where our bodies could not go. They worked in the poison gas when our equipment failed. Marcus watched the Empress process her son's innocent observations. The prince was right, of course. Different tools were good for different jobs. Advanced was not always better. You know, Marcus said carefully, on Earth we have a saying, the right tool for the right job. Sometimes you need a high-tech energy beam. Sometimes you need a simple hammer. The smart engineer knows when to use which one. The Empress nodded slowly. And perhaps the smart ruler knows when to listen to different kinds of wisdom. Dr. Zethris, the Zephyrian doctor, entered the room to check on Marcus. As he scanned Marcus with his medical devices, he shook his head in amazement. I have never seen anything like this, the doctor said. The amount of physical stress this human endured should have killed him. The toxic gas exposure alone was nearly fatal. But somehow he kept going long enough to save the prince. How? The Empress asked. I am not sure. Human physiology is remarkably adaptable under extreme stress. But there was something else. Something I cannot measure with my instruments. The doctor looked at Marcus. You were running on something beyond physical strength. What was it? Marcus thought about how to explain it. I suppose it was determination. When someone is counting on you, especially a child, you find strength you did not know you had. This determination, the Empress said. Is it common among humans? When it comes to protecting others. Yes, Your Majesty. Very common. Prince Cathford tugged on his mother's arm. Mother, can the Guardian stay with us? I want to learn more about humans and their tools and their determination. The Empress looked at her son, then at Marcus. I think that might be arranged. But first, you need to recover from your injuries. Guardian. Marcus started to say that he was not a guardian, just an engineer who had done what anyone would do. But then he saw the hope in the young prince's eyes and the thoughtful expression on the Empress's face. Maybe, sometimes it was better to accept a title you had not asked for, if it helped build a bridge between two very different kinds of people. I would be honored. Your Majesty, Marcus said simply, and for the first time since he had known her, the Empress Zelandra smiled at a human. 2 weeks later, Marcus stood in the main assembly hall of the mining station. Word had spread throughout the Zephyrian Empire about what had happened. The human who had saved the prince had become famous, though Marcus was not sure he liked the attention. The hall was packed with beings from dozens of worlds. Zephyrian nobles stood beside human miners and alien traders. Everyone wanted to see what the Empress would do. Empress Ilandra had called for a formal ceremony, but she had not told anyone what it was for. Marcus suspected it was to thank him publicly for saving the prince. He hoped it would be quick. He wanted to get back to his normal work. Prince Kethver sat in the front row, looking excited. Over the past 2 weeks, he had spent hours with Marcus, learning about human tools and human ways of thinking. The prince was fascinated by the idea that different approaches could solve the same problems. The Empress stood at the front of the hall. She wore her crown of light and formal robes that sparkled like stars. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the room. "Citizens of the Empire," she began, "we are here today because of an act of courage that has changed my understanding of what it means to be worthy of respect." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. He did not like being the center of attention. 2 weeks ago, my son was trapped in a collapsed mine. Our best engineers, with our most advanced technology, could not reach him. Our telepathic abilities, which we have always considered superior to any mechanical device, failed us when we needed them most. Murmurs ran through the crowd. It was unusual for a Zephyrian leader to admit that their technology had limitations. It was a human, using tools we considered primitive, who accomplished what we could not. But that is not why we are here today. The Empress paused and looked directly at Marcus. We are here because of something much more important than the success of his tools. She gestured for Marcus to come forward. Reluctantly, he walked to the front of the hall. "Marcus Chun," the Empress said formally, "you risked your life to save a child who was not your own species. You crawled through poison gas and unstable tunnels. You nearly died from toxic exposure. When I asked you why, you said it was because someone had to help." The Empress turned to address the crowd again. "I have spent my life believing that the Zephyrian way was the only right way, that our mental abilities made us superior to all other species. That advancement meant technology and telepathy." She paused, and when she continued, her voice was softer. "I was wrong. True advancement is not about the tools you use or the powers you possess. It is about the choices you make when others are in need." The Empress reached into her robes and pulled out something Marcus had never seen before. It was a pendant made of the same light crystal as her crown, but it was shaped like 2 hands reaching toward each other. In almost ancient language, the Empress said, there is a word that has not been used for 1,000 years. Kavani. It means guardian of the future or protector of hope. It was once given to the greatest heroes of our people, those who sacrificed everything to protect what was precious. Marcus felt his heart start to beat faster. He had a feeling he knew where this was going. "No non-Zephyrian has ever been given this title," the Empress continued, "because we believed that only our people could understand what it meant to protect the future." She held up the crystal pendant so everyone could see it. "Today, I offer this title to someone who has shown us that protection and sacrifice know no species boundaries. Someone who has taught us that true strength comes not from superior technology, but from the willingness to put others before yourself." The Empress stepped closer to Marcus. "Marcus Chun, I name you Kethani, guardian of the future, protector of hope." She placed the pendant around his neck. As soon as the crystal touched his chest, it began to glow with a warm light. "But your Majesty," Marcus said quietly, "I am still human." The Empress smiled, and this time her smile reached her golden eyes. "No, Marcus Chen, you were human when you entered that collapsed mine. What came out was something far greater." She turned to address the crowd one more time. "Let it be known throughout the Empire that the title of Kethani has been awarded to one who proved that honor and courage belong to no single species. From this day forward, this station will become a center for cooperation between humans and Zephyrians. We will learn from each other. Human determination and ingenuity will work alongside Zephyrian knowledge and technology. The crowd erupted in cheers. Marcus looked out and saw human miners standing next to Zephyrian nobles, all applauding together. Prince Kethfer jumped up from his seat and ran to Marcus. "Now you really are my guardian," he said happily. "What does this mean, Your Majesty?" Marcus asked. "What am I supposed to do as this Kethany?" "You will be our first cultural exchange ambassador," the Empress replied. "You will help both our species understand each other better. You will teach us that different does not mean inferior. And you will help us remember that the most important technology is kindness." Marcus looked down at the glowing pendant on his chest. It felt warm against his skin, like a promise of better things to come. "There is one condition," the Empress added. "My son refuses to return to the home world without his guardian. If you accept this position, you will be responsible for his education about human ways of thinking." Marcus looked at the young prince, who was practically bouncing with excitement. Then he looked at the crowd of mixed species, all watching him hopefully. "I accept, Your Majesty, but on one condition of my own." "What is that?" "I want to train a team of both human and Zephyrian engineers. No more calling anyone primitive. We all have something to learn from each other." The Empress laughed, a sound like crystal bells. "Agreed, Kethani. Let us build a future worthy of the title you now carry." As the ceremony ended and the crowd began to disperse, Prince Kethfer stayed close to Marcus's side. "Guardian, will you teach me how to use human tools?" "Only if you teach me how Zephyrian telepathy works," Marcus replied. "Deal," the prince said happily. Marcus smiled as he watched humans and Zephyrians talking together, sharing ideas and learning from each other. He had come to this station as a simple maintenance engineer, looked down upon as a primitive dirt crawler. Now he was Kethani, guardian of the future, bridge between two species. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Chen felt truly worthy of the respect he had finally earned.